A very good evening to you all, friends. I am CS Sanjeev Singhal, Chairman Committee for Member in Practice, and today we are bringing to you our 92nd program for the council year uh, from the Committee for Member in Practice. So far, 91 programs have been done by the Committee for Member in Practice in this year, and more than 1 lakh members have attended these programs. Even in today's program, there are 2100 plus members, despite the fact that yesterday Union Budget 2022 was presented by the Honorable Finance Minister, and most of the program today are on the Union Budget. Today we have two very esteemed speakers, CA Sunil Garg, who is a 1997 batch chartered accountant and is practicing in Delhi, and CA Alok Garg, who is working in industry. Alok has also been a special invitee with the Accounting Standard Board and is a prolific speaker and has authored many books. The highlight of today's interaction with CA Sunil Garg Ji will be that he'll be talking about how to automate small firm offices, and this will be really very useful for firms having say 5 to 10 people only. He has practically done it in his firm, and we requested him to share his valuable experience with all the members so that the other members can be benefited. I'm extremely thankful to Sunil Gargji and Alok for sparing their valuable time and being with us. With this, I would request Sunil Gargji to share his opening thoughts. And after that, from the small firm perspective, we have received a few questions in advance on the practicability of office automation for small firms. We'll be taking up those questions. So, Sunilji, I would request you to give your opening comments on the subject, and then we would like to ask you a few questions. Thank you, and over to you, Sunilji.
First of all, I want to convey my thanks to Committee for Members in Practice Chairman CA Sanjeev Singhal ji and Vice Chairman CA Prasanna Kumar ji in his absence here. Friends, today I want जिस सब्जेक्ट में आज मैं बोलना चाह रहा हूँ वो आजकल का हॉट टॉपिक है because of lockdown and weekend curfew in Delhi. फ्रेंड्स, मैं आपको क्लाउड कंप्यूटर के बारे में बताना चाहता हूँ. फ्रेंड्स, शुरू में जब हमने प्रैक्टिस शुरू करी 97 में मैंने क्वालिफाई किया था, तो कंप्यूटर तब आया था, हम मैनुअली अकाउंटिंग करते थे. फिर बाद में धीरे धीरे कंप्यूटर बढ़ता चला गया और आज हम सारा काम मोस्टली कंप्यूटर से करते हैं. लेकिन अब कंप्यूटर के बाद अब क्लाउड कंप्यूटिंग का जमाना है. अब हमें कंप्यूटर से भी आगे क्लाउड कंप्यूटर पे जाना है. क्लाउड कंप्यूटिंग में ये क्या चीज़ है, ये मैं आपके साथ थोड़ा डिस्कस करना चाहता हूँ. और ये जब से मैंने क्लाउड कंप्यूटिंग अपनाया है, फर्स्ट लॉकडाउन में मार्च 2020 के आसपास ये हमने शुरू किया था, तब से मेरे को काफ़ी बेनिफिट हुए हैं. पहले मैं सोचता था कि क्लाउड कंप्यूटिंग तो सिर्फ बड़ी फर्म्स ही अपना सकती हैं, हम लोग इसको नहीं अडोप्ट कर पाएंगे बिकॉज ऑफ कॉस्ट या टेक्निकली हम उसको समझ नहीं पाएंगे. लेकिन ये क्लाउड कंप्यूटिंग अपनाने से मेरे को बहुत बेनिफिट हुए. एक मेरे दिमाग में ना हमेशा टेंशन रहती थी कि मेरा जो डेटा है उसका बैकअप नहीं हो पा रहा, या होता था तो महीने में एक बार ही होता था. और उसके अलावा जैसे ये लॉकडाउन हुआ तो कि भाई काम कैसे होगा. तो फ्रेंड्स, मैं आपको अपनी थोड़ी जर्नी बताता हूँ कि कैसे हमने ये क्लाउड कंप्यूटिंग शुरू किया. जो फर्स्ट लॉकडाउन था मार्च 2020 का, तो उस टाइम मैं अपना कंप्यूटर घर पे लेके गया और फिर वो जिसको मेन कंप्यूटर वाला सर्वर बोलते हैं हम, उसमें सारा डेटा उसी में रखते हैं. सब लोग लोकल नेटवर्क के द्वारा उसी से एक्सेस करके काम करते हैं. तो जब मैं घर पे अपना कंप्यूटर ले गया तो उस टाइम हम एनी डेस्क या टीम व्यूअर के द्वारा काम करते थे. तो उस टाइम एक ही आदमी काम कर पाता था एक समय में. तो ये लगा कि भाई ऐसे तो काम नहीं हो पाएगा. और एक हमारा क्लाइंट है, वो क्लाउड कंप्यूटिंग की सर्विस प्रोवाइड करता है, तो वो काफ़ी 6-7 महीने से कर रहा था, लेकिन हमारा इंटरेस्ट नहीं था उसमें. लेकिन जब फर्स्ट लॉकडाउन हुआ, मजबूरी की वजह से हमने उसका क्लाउड का स्पेस लिया और अपना सारा डाटा उस पर हमने ट्रांसफर कर दिया. फिर 3-4 महीने हम क्लाउड पे काम करते रहे, लेकिन उसमें कुछ परेशानियां थी. जैसे वो बोलता था कि आपने उसमें ईमेल नहीं चलानी, ईमेल चलाओगे तो वायरस आ जाएगा. तो उसकी वजह से हमें कोई भी फाइल मेल करनी होती थी तो उसको पहले क्लाउड से डाटा को लोकल कंप्यूटर में डाउनलोड करना पड़ता था फाइल को, और फिर अटैचमेंट करके भेजते थे, अटैच करके। तो हम है ना परेशान होके हमने 3-4 महीने बाद अगस्त 2020 में क्लाउड छोड़ दिया, और हम अपने लोकल पे आगे काम करते रहे। लेकिन एक इस दौरान एक चीज और समझ में आई हमारे को, एक दिक्कत महसूस हुई कि जैसे हम जब क्लाइंट की टीडीएस और जीएसटी की रिटर्न भरते थे, तो हर महीने है ना उसका डाटा 3 बारी हमारे पास मेल से आता था। जब जीएसटी R1 भर रहे हैं तो डाटा आ रहा मेल पे, फिर 3B भर रहे हैं तब आता था, फिर टीडीएस की रिटर्न भरते थे तब आता था। और फिर जब उसमें कुछ भी करेक्शन करना हुआ तो वो जो हमारे पास डाटा आया हुआ होता था हम उसमें कर लेते थे करेक्शन, और लेकिन जो क्लाइंट के पास मेन डेटा है उसमें करेक्शन नहीं हो पाता था। तो इससे हमारे को दिक्कत लगी, तो हमारे दिमाग में एक आइडिया आया, क्यों ना हम अपने क्लाइंट्स का जो डेटा है वो क्लाउड पे डलवाएं, ताकि एक ही डेटा सोर्स पे दोनों लोग काम करें, क्लाइंट भी और हम भी। तो हमने क्लाइंटों को बोला और उनका डेटा है ना हमने क्लाउड पे डलवा दिया। तो अभी क्या था, क्लाइंट का स्टाफ अपना सेल, परचेज, बैंकिंग और जो भी इसकी अकाउंटिंग है वो करता था, और हम अपना जीएसटी कंप्लाइंस, टीडीएस कंप्लाइंस वो है हाथ के हाथ करते रहते थे। जो कोई कमी होती थी वो हम ठीक कर देते थे। अब है ना हमारा जो मेन डेटा है उसी में हम दोनों लोग काम कर रहे हैं। तो उससे जो एक तो रोज हर महीने 3 बारी मेल पे डेटा आता था, वो चीज खत्म हो गई। और जो हमने गलती थी वो ठीक करी एक बारी, तो वो हमेशा के लिए ठीक हो गई, आगे वाले महीनों में भी वो गलती अब दोबारा से हमें ठीक नहीं करनी पड़ती थी। तो हमने ये क्लाउड का ये शुरू किया। लेकिन और फिर हमने जो जिन लोगों की अकाउंटिंग हम करते थे हमने उनका भी डेटा क्लाउड पे डाल दिया, और उनको भी एक्सेस दे दिया कि आप भी अपना सेल, परचेज, बैंक आप डालो, बाकी कंप्लाइंस हम करेंगे। तो इस तरह से काम चलता रहा। लेकिन अब दोबारा लॉकडाउन की, जब मार्च अप्रैल 21 में लॉकडाउन की दोबारा से बात चली, तब हमारे दिमाग में आया कि यार हमारा तो फिर से वही चीज हो गई। तो हमने अपना जो वर्ड एक्सेल की फाइलें थी उसके लिए हमने सोचा नहीं यार कि क्लाउड पे तो हम नहीं डाल पाएंगे, क्योंकि उसमें हमें परेशानियां दिख रही। तो फिर हमारे को ना किसी ने ये बताया कि आप माइक्रोसॉफ्ट का 365 लो, ऑफिस 365 जिसको पहले बोलते थे, आजकल माइक्रोसॉफ्ट 365 है। तो फिर मैंने कहा यार वो तो खाली एक्सेल और वर्ड है ना, वो मतलब क्लाउड क्लाउड स्पेस कहाँ है? बोले नहीं, वो क्लाउड स्पेस भी प्रोवाइड करते हैं, और बल्कि वो तो 1 TB यानी कि 1000 GB का स्पेस देते हैं पर यूजर। फिर और बोले वो इजी टू यूज है, उसमें आपको कोई तकलीफ नहीं होगी मेल वगैरह करने में और में। तो फिर हमने उसको समझा और ऑनलाइन परचेज किया, उसका कोई वेंडर नहीं है, ऑनलाइन ही परचेज करना पड़ता है। हमने उसको देख के समझ के उसको खरीदा, और उसके बाद हमने अपनी सारी वर्ड, एक्सेल, पीडीएफ वगैरह सारी फाइलें माइक्रोसॉफ्ट की वन ड्राइव बोलते हैं उसको, उसमें डाल दिया। और अपना बीजी एक्सेल, सॉरी बीजी टैली और कंप्यूटेक्स, वो हमने जो क्लाउड दूसरा एक लोकल वेंडर से ले रखा था उस पर डाला, क्योंकि जो माइक्रोसॉफ्ट है वो थर्ड पार्टी सॉफ्टवेयर को इंस्टॉल करने की इजाजत नहीं देता। तो ये चीज हमने करी, और इससे हमारे को बहुत बेनिफिट हो रहा है, मतलब बैकअप की टेंशन मिट गई। एनीवेयर ऑफिस है, कहीं भी 24 घंटे हम जहाँ भी जाएं वहां पे हमारा डाटा हमारे साथ अवेलेबल है। अभी दिल्ली में अभी वीकेंड कर्फ्यू लगा था, बीच में प्राइवेट ऑफिस बंद भी कर दिए थे, तब भी हमें कोई टेंशन नहीं हुई कि भाई हमारा काम कैसे होगा, या मतलब लड़के कैसे काम करेंगे। जैसे एक हमारा जो पार्टनर है वो जज्जर रहता है, तो उसने वहां से भी काम करा खूब आराम से, कोई दिक्कत नहीं हुई हमारे को। तो इसके बारे में मैं आपको कहना चाहता हूँ कि आप भी ये क्लाउड कंप्यूटिंग अपनाओ जरूर। क्लाउड क्लाउड स्पेस लो आप, लोकल वाले का भी लो, और ये माइक्रोसॉफ्ट 365 लो, दोनों के अलग अलग बेनिफिट है। तो मैं इसके बारे में ही कुछ बस बताना चाहता था। बाकी सर आप जैसे क्वेश्चन आंसर फॉर्म में पूछेंगे तो वो ज्यादा बढ़िया रहेगा। हेलो संजीव जी। सर।
Sir, can you hear us?
हाँ हाँ मैं सुन रहा हूँ, मैंने
Yeah,
कहा।
yeah. So Sunil ji, members wants to ask, what is the size of your team? मतलब आपके ऑफिस में आपके अलावा और या आपको मिला के कितने लोग हैं?
सर मेरे को मिला के टोटल 9 लोग हैं, मतलब 8 लोगों का स्टाफ है प्लस में मैं।
अच्छा, total there are 9 people.
यस सर।
Okay, so means this can be really implemented in a very small firm also.
यस सर। सर मैं तो कहूँगा जो प्रोपराइटर है ना, सोल प्रोपराइटर, उसको तो ये जरूर लेना चाहिए, क्योंकि वो तो
Okay.
अकेला है। हाँ, तो उसके लिए तो 24 घंटे ऑफिस उसके पास ही होना चाहिए। उसने स्टाफ भी नहीं रखा होता शुरू में कोई।
Great. So were you operating from office or on virtual mode immediately before COVID-19? उससे पहले आप ऑफिस से अपना काम करते थे या you used to work virtually? COVID-19 जब तक नहीं आया था।
सर कोविड-19 से पहले तो ऑफिस से ही करते थे। ये क्लाउड का सुना था, लेकिन मन नहीं करता था या हिम्मत नहीं होती थी, और लगता था कि टेक्निकली भी हम उसको समझ नहीं पाएंगे, और लगता था कि महंगा होगा।
Okay. So did you face any difficulty during COVID-19 in working from office and due to lockdown? And then what changes did you make so that you continue to work and continue to serve your clients?
सर उस टाइम यही दिक्कत आई कि सब लोग तो घरों में बंद थे, तो फिर हम एक टाइम में ना एक ही आदमी काम कर पा रहा था एनी डेस्क और उसके द्वारा। तो फिर हमने ये क्लाउड लिया सर, जो एक हमारा क्लाइंट ही देता था, लोकल क्लाउड लिया हमने। पहले माइक्रोसॉफ्ट का क्लाउड नहीं लिया, लोकल क्लाउड लिया, और उसमें अपना डाटा डाला, और उसमें ही सब लोग काम करने लग गए। जो भी हमारे 8-9 लोग थे, सब लोग उसके थ्रू काम करने लगे फिर। तो वो हमने अच्छी तरह से काम करा। क्लाउड लॉकडाउन में हमें कोई दिक्कत नहीं हुई उस दौरान।
Okay, that's great. So according to you, which one is better? एक अपना पर्सनल डेडिकेटेड सर्वर होना और वन ड्राइव?
पर्सनल डेडिकेटेड सर्वर की बजाय तो ये क्लाउड स्पेस अच्छा है, या माइक्रोसॉफ्ट का 365 मतलब वन ड्राइव, वो ज्यादा बेटर है। क्योंकि डेडिकेटेड सर्वर हमने अगर बना भी लिया अपना, तो एक तो वो महंगा काफी है जी। उसका हार्डवेयर और सॉफ्टवेयर दोनों मिला के लगभग 2 लाख रुपए का पड़ता है डेडिकेटेड सर्वर। और फिर उसको ना सर कंटिन्यूअस ऑन रखना है, तो पावर सप्लाई, अनडिस्टर्बेड पावर सप्लाई चाहिए। और सर कई बार क्या होता है कि जैसे वो चलते चलते ना, एक बार पीछे मेरे एक दोस्त के हुआ, वो ऑफिस में सर्वर खुला छोड़ के आते थे, तो वहां पे शॉर्ट सर्किट से या गर्म होके ना कंप्यूटर में आग लगी, और पूरा ऑफिस उनका जल गया। और डेडिकेटेड सर्वर में हैकिंग का भी खतरा है सर। तो जो जिससे हमने क्लाउड लिया है, या ये जो वन ड्राइव है माइक्रोसॉफ्ट 365, तो वो तो बड़े वेंडर हैं, तो वो लोग उसको मैनेज कर सकते हैं हैकिंग वगैरह को और फायर को। इसलिए मतलब डेडिकेटेड सर्वर से तो क्लाउड स्पेस अच्छा है सर।
Okay. So what are the benefits of OneDrive? You mentioned some benefit. Are there any other benefit also of OneDrive?
वन ड्राइव में सर मेन तो ये कि बैकअप नहीं लेना पड़ा, वो सिंक्रोनाइज होता रहता है ऑटोमेटिक। और प्लस में ना हर यूजर को 1 TB स्पेस मिलता है सर। मतलब 1 TB मतलब 1000 GB का, मतलब बहुत ज्यादा है, मोर देन एनफ। जैसे हमारा भी सर 8-9 लोग हैं और ठीक ठाक काम है, तो भी 100 GB का डाटा हुआ सिर्फ। और हमने जैसे 8 यूजर लिए, तो हमारे को 8 TB का स्पेस मिल चुका है, 8000 GB। अच्छा, उसके अलावा वन ड्राइव में ये है कि हम इसको ना शेयर कर सकते हैं दूसरे को। किसी के साथ हमने काम करना है तो उसको हम शेयर कर सकते हैं, या इसमें को वर्किंग भी अलाउड है। एक साथ एक फाइल पे 3-4 लोगों ने काम करना है, या उससे भी ज्यादा लोगों ने काम करना है, वो भी काम कर सकते हैं। उसके अलावा वन ड्राइव में ऑटो बैकअप तो है ही, और इसमें डिफरेंट वर्जन भी, अगर मान लो कल का वर्जन हमने देखना है, अपना फाइल में कुछ काम किया था, तो वो भी अवेलेबल है। इस तरह से वन ड्राइव में बहुत सारे बेनिफिट हैं सर।
Okay, that is good. Some of the members want to know what is the cost you are incurring on this technology that you are using.
सर जो माइक्रोसॉफ्ट 365 है, ऑफिस 365 भी जिसको पहले बोलते थे, ये तो बहुत ही अफोर्डेबल प्राइस है। इसकी प्राइस है सर 1500 रुपए पर पर्सन पर एनम, इंक्लूडिंग जीएसटी। यानी कि अगर बेसिक प्राइस देखें तो वो 105 रुपीज है पर पर्सन पर मंथ। और साथ में इतनी सारी चीजें मिल रही हैं, प्लानर, स्ट्रीम, आउटलुक की एक ईमेल आईडी, और भी बहुत सारी चीजें हैं, 17-18 चीजें हैं जो उसमें माइक्रोसॉफ्ट वाला देता है। और पर सर हमने जो लोकल अपना वो क्लाउड का स्पेस ले रखा है, उसका खर्चा 3000 रुपये पर मंथ फॉर 5 यूजर, और उसमें उन्होंने 100 GB का स्पेस दिया हुआ है जी। तो ये कॉस्टिंग है सर लगभग।
So do you need to take both local server as well as this?
यस सर, क्योंकि ना जो माइक्रोसॉफ्ट 365 है वो थर्ड पार्टी के सॉफ्टवेयर को इंस्टॉल नहीं करने देता। और हाँ, थर्ड पार्टी जैसे ये टैली बिजी हो गया, अकाउंटिंग सॉफ्टवेयर, कंप्यूटेक्स हो गया, ई फाइलिंग के लिए, रिटर्न फाइलिंग के लिए, तो वहां पे वो अलाउ नहीं करता थर्ड पार्टी सॉफ्टवेयर का इंस्टॉलेशन। उसके लिए हमें लोकल, मतलब जो छोटे छोटे वेंडर होते हैं उनका ये क्लाउड स्पेस लेना पड़ा। हमने वर्ड एक्सेल की फाइलें तो उसमें डाल दी अपने माइक्रोसॉफ्ट वाले में, पर ये जो टैली बिजी कंप्यूटर ये सब चीजें हमने लोकल वाले उसमें डाली हैं सर, क्लाउड पे।
Have you evaluated any other drive, say for example whether members can go for Google Drive? Is that costlier, cheaper?
कॉस्टली तो नहीं है सर, बराबर ही मैंने सर, जैसे हम इतने सालों से वर्ड एक्सेल यूज कर रहे हैं और माइक्रोसॉफ्ट है वही वर्ड एक्सेल बनाने वाला है, तो वन ड्राइव जब हम लेते हैं तो हमें सारा काम एक्सेल और वर्ड में ही करते हैं, मतलब उसी में करना पड़ता है। और जो हमारे क्लाइंट्स हैं वो भी एक्सेल वर्ड यूज कर रहे हैं, तो मतलब दूसरी ड्राइव, मतलब गूगल ड्राइव की बजाय, गूगल का जैसे स्प्रेडशीट है एक्सेल की तरह ही है बिल्कुल, लेकिन फिर भी थोड़े कुछ फॉर्मूले काम नहीं करते। और फिर चलो हम तो उसको यूज टू हो भी जाएंगे, फिर क्लाइंट्स को भेजते हैं या क्लाइंट्स की वो आती है फाइलें, थोड़ा सा उसमें फर्क रहता है मेरे ख्याल से। मतलब ये ठीक है माइक्रोसॉफ्ट 365, क्योंकि ये एक्सेल वर्ड वाले का है।
Can you explain to our members how do you copy data on OneDrive?
हाँ सर, ये मतलब बड़ा इजी है। शुरू में तो मुश्किल लगता है, लेकिन बाद में जब समझ में आ जाता है तो पता लगता है कि यार कोई ज्यादा मुश्किल नहीं था। जैसे सर हमने माइक्रोसॉफ्ट 365 लिया, लॉगिन किया, उसके बाद वहां हमारे को एक है ना सिंक्रोनाइज है, उसके द्वारा एक वन ड्राइव का आइकॉन हमारे लोकल कंप्यूटर पे बन जाता है। और ये वन ड्राइव वैसे ही है सर जैसे कि हमारे लोकल कंप्यूटर में सी ड्राइव, डी ड्राइव, ई ड्राइव होती है, वैसे ही एक वन ड्राइव का आइकॉन बन गया। और अब हमने क्या करना है कि पहले अपने डेटा को एनालाइज करना है। जैसे मोस्टली मुझे लगता है हमारा डेटा एक्सेल, वर्ड, पीडीएफ, ये कुछ फाइलें हैं 3-4 तरह की, और उसके बाद तो मतलब वो वाला कंप्यूटर में वही वाला हम इसमें माइक्रोसॉफ्ट 365 में डाल पाएंगे। तो वो डेटा को हमने कॉपी करके, कॉपी एंड ड्रैग एंड ड्रॉप करना है, जस्ट वन ड्राइव में हमने डाल दिया। उसके बाद वो डाटा ना सर वन ड्राइव से अपने आप सिंक्रोनाइज हो जाएगा, और जो माइक्रोसॉफ्ट 365 का क्लाउड है वहां पे सिंक्रोनाइज होके वो उसका एक बैकअप तैयार हो जाएगा। अब हम दोनों जगह काम कर सकते हैं सर। अगर हमने लोकल कंप्यूटर पे काम करना है बिना इंटरनेट के, तो हम अपना लोकल जो वन ड्राइव का आइकॉन बना हुआ है उसमें जाके काम करेंगे, और वो काम बाद में जब भी हमने बंद किया, नेट जब भी चालू होगा, वो ऑटोमेटिक ऊपर जो माइक्रोसॉफ्ट 365 का क्लाउड है उसके साथ सिंक्रोनाइज हो जाएगा। और अगर कभी हमने अपना लैपटॉप ले जाना भूल गए, कहीं पे बाहर गए हुए हैं, वहां पे हमने ऑनलाइन काम करना है, माइक्रोसॉफ्ट का हम क्लाउड खोलेंगे और वहां पे काम करेंगे। वो फिर जब जब भी हम अपना लोकल कंप्यूटर खोलेंगे तो उसके साथ सिंक्रोनाइज हो जाएगा बाद में, मतलब ऑटोमेटिक होता रहेगा सिंक्रोनाइजेशन।
Right. What are the benefits of local cloud space, if any?
लोकल क्लाउड स्पेस का सर, वो जैसे मैंने बताया कि इसमें थर्ड पार्टी का सॉफ्टवेयर इंस्टॉल कर सकते हैं। और सर इससे ना हमने ये भी सोचा कि जो लोकल क्लाउड स्पेस है हमने अपने मोस्टली क्लाइंट्स को दिलवा दिया ये। अब उनका सारा डाटा उसी पे डला हुआ है, वो लोग अपना काम करते हैं, हम अपना काम करते रहते हैं। और लोकल क्लाउड स्पेस का वही है कि थर्ड पार्टी सॉफ्टवेयर इंस्टॉल कर सकते हैं, ये वाला मेन है, उसमें माइक्रोसॉफ्ट 365 में नहीं कर सकते।
Okay. Sunilji, do you also have the concept of timesheet, job costing, etc.? And if yes, then can you explain it? Generally क्या होता है? I mean, we think कोई फायदा नहीं है, small firm में हमारे पास तो सारे ऑफिस का कंट्रोल है. So, do you have that concept? And if you have it, are you finding it useful? What are the benefits? Does it take too much of time?
तब हमने एक सॉफ्टवेयर खरीदा था, बट
Sunil ji, we are not able to hear you. Can you be a bit clear?
ओके सर, ये हमने 2-3 साल पहले हमने शुरू किया था जॉब शीट एंड टाइम शीट वाला कंसेप्ट। उस टाइम हमने एक सॉफ्टवेयर खरीदा था, पुणे का था, और उसमें हम अपना एक जॉब कार्ड खोल के टाइम डालते रहते थे। लेकिन उसमें क्या तकलीफ थी कि लड़कों को ना थोड़ा सा आलस आता था डालने में, कई बार उसमें रह जाती थी। तो जब से हमने ये माइक्रोसॉफ्ट 365 खरीदा, तब से सर हमने ना यहीं पे एक एक्सेल शीट बना दी, उसी में सबकी जॉब शीट भी खोल दी। उनको जो मैंने काम बोला, मैंने उनको बोला कि भाई इसी में नोट डाउन करते जाओ अपने। और या मेरे को भी कोई काम सुबह शाम कभी भी ध्यान आया तो मैं वो खोल के इसमें नोट डाउन कर देता हूँ, उनको बता देता हूँ भाई तुम्हारी जॉब शीट में मैंने ये काम नोट किया, इसको कर लेना। और ऐसे ही है ना सर, टाइम शीट हमने, एक सेकंड आपको, ये टाइम शीट भी हमने बनाई और इसका ना सर बहुत ज्यादा बेनिफिट हुआ हमारे को। एक सेकंड अभी दिखा रहा हूँ। इससे हमारे को क्या आइडिया लगा सर, किस क्लाइंट के किस काम में कितना टाइम लगा, और वो हमारा लड़के का जिसका टाइम लगा उसकी क्या कॉस्टिंग थी। जैसे सर ये ना हर एक आदमी की टाइम शीट बना रखी है हमने, जो मतलब ऑफिस स्टाफ है, और वो जहां जो जो काम करता जाता है ये लिखता जाता है कि भाई इस क्लाइंट के इस काम में हमने इतना टाइम लगाया। तो फिर जो कई जॉब्स लंबी चल जाती हैं या स्पेसिफिक जॉब्स हैं, उस उनके केस में ना हम अपना टाइम शीट से टाइम निकाल के फिर उसकी कॉस्टिंग कैलकुलेट करते हैं सर, और फिर उसके हिसाब से उसकी बिलिंग करते हैं जी। ये टाइम शीट और जॉब शीट दोनों हमारे लिए बहुत ज्यादा बेनिफिशियल रहेगी, क्योंकि क्लाइंट्स को भी लगता है और कई बार हमें खुद ही लगता है कि यार इस पे तो कोई ज्यादा टाइम नहीं लगा होगा, लेकिन जब हम वो नोट किया हुआ टाइम निकालते हैं तब हमें पता चलता है कि अच्छा हो इसमें तो बहुत टाइम लग गया। और फिर हम क्लाइंट को भी बता सकते हैं कि देखो जी हमारा आपके इस काम में इतना टाइम लगा है। मतलब आप जैसे वो कई क्लाइंट बोलते हैं यार इसमें तो कुछ टाइम ही नहीं लगा होगा, या इसके इतने पैसे किस बात के। तो ये वाला काफी बेनिफिशियल रहा सर हमारे लिए।
Okay. Actually, we have received a very large number of questions. In fact, now 2,400 plus members are on this. So one question is the annual charges incurred for private cloud and Microsoft 365, which you have already explained. This question was asked by Shaurya Mishra. Abhishek Garg has asked a question, what is the total cost of cloud computing? That also you have answered. Hemlata Kubleji has asked a question whether cost has increased after implementing cloud.
सर ये जो क्लाउड का मतलब जो एनुअल खर्चा उसको आप कह सकते हो इंक्रीज हुई है, लेकिन जो काम करने की इजीनेस जो मिल गई हमें उससे तो हम काम कई गुना कर पाए। नहीं तो जैसे दिल्ली में तो वीकेंड कर्फ्यू था, फिर बीच में प्राइवेट ऑफिस बंद भी कर दिए थे, लेकिन हमें कोई चिंता नहीं थी, ऑफिस खुले चाहे ना खुले हमारा ऑफिस तो खुला हुआ है 24 घंटे।
And your cost base was 1,500 into 9 people. So 13,500 for
Yes,
the
sir.
whole year.
Yes, sir. For Microsoft and 36,000 for local cloud, sir.
Okay. So total 50,000 for the whole
Yes,
year.
sir. For whole year. बट जो कंफर्ट और जो हमारे को आराम मिल रहा है काम करने का वो तो बहुत ज्यादा है सर।
Will it also help you in reducing the infrastructure requirement in your office? Can you make it a 50% work from home and 50% work from office and reduce your rental cost by half?
सर वो अभी नहीं हो सकता क्योंकि हमारा साइज बहुत छोटा ना, 8 लोग हैं जो ऑफिस है वो मिनिमम है। पर अगर ये साइज हम बढ़ाएंगे ना तो हमें खर्चा बढ़ाने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी सर। ये खर्चा कम तो नहीं हो सकता हमारा, पर अगर जैसे धीरे धीरे हम काम बढ़ा रहे हैं, अगर लड़के बढ़ेंगे तो हमें ये नहीं है कि भाई और ऑफिस लेना पड़ेगा।
Right.
उस केस में हम ये कर सकते हैं।
Some members are requesting you to speak in English because we have our friends from South India also. So one question is, in cloud, what are the software you are using?
In cloud,
are you using any software? Maybe probably they are referring to Microsoft 365. Maybe. Okay, that's fine.
समझ में नहीं आया सर। हाँ,
okay. Jostin Pereira has a question. Can you advise about security of the data on the cloud? Is this data secured?
सर जो Microsoft 365 है तो वो तो जो वेंडर ही इतना बड़ा है, मतलब Microsoft MS।
Please try to speak in English if you can.
Okay, sir. मैं कह रहा हूँ सर जो regarding security of data, I want to say that in Microsoft 365 cloud, I think there is no need to worry about, because the vendor is number one of the world, number one software supplier of the world. But in case of local cloud, yes, there may be problem of data security. But
right.
they are continuously taking backup.
Okay.
Cloud space supplier.
Right. CA Himlata Kuble has one more question. Whether your system hangs as there is so much data? 1 TB per person. So is there a problem of that the system will hang?
No, sir. The 1 TB is space available. Our data is only 100 GB, and there is no hanging problem.
Okay, very
1
good.
TB is the space available. Yes.
CA Shripad S. Kulkarni has asked a question. How do you get data from client? Do they also have access to your cloud server to deliver the data?
No, sir. We can provide, but at present we have not given the access to them. They give us data through mail only at present.
But do you think it is possible that you give them access and they'll be able to access?
Yes, sir. We can make a separate folder for each client and give access to that folder only. There will be no problem.
That's very good. CA Siddhant Jain has a question. Is there a possibility that a file will be deleted or corrupted on the cloud?
Sir, in Microsoft 365, there is no problem. Because if the file, first of all, no person can delete your file. If you share your file with someone, he can't delete your file. But if you delete your file by mistake, then it will be available in the recycle bin for around 60 days. But in local cloud, yes, there is possibility.
Yes. CA Siddhant Jain has one more question, that maybe some of the client are using the outdated version or the earlier version of Microsoft Office, whereas in Office 365 you will have the latest version. Whether all the files are compatible with each other?
ये प्रॉब्लम तो अभी भी है. अगर क्लाइंट अलग वर्जन यूज करेगा तो हायर वर्जन में स्मॉलर लोअर वर्जन चल जाएगा, बट लोअर वर्जन में हायर वर्जन नहीं चलेगा. ये प्रॉब्लम तो वैसे भी रहती है, अगर हमने क्लाउड नहीं दिया तब भी रहती है.
Okay. CA Abhijit Vilas Patil has a question that do you have any suggestion for any office work management software for team? For example, to-do list, calendar, reminder, etc., outstanding bills. So let me answer that from the Committee for Member in Practice, we are offering many practice management software free of cost or at very reduced prices. And calendar and to-do list, etc., are available in this Office 365 as well. Now, CA Sujal Manyar has a question: how much RAM or hard disk it consumes in working? आपके लैपटॉप में कितनी रैम है, कितनी हार्ड डिस्क है? सुनील जी, you are not audible properly.
Okay, सर मैं ये बोल रहा हूँ एक्स्ट्रा उसको बिल्कुल भी नहीं चाहिए. जो नॉर्मल रैम और हार्ड डिस्क आपके कंप्यूटर में है ना, उतने से ही काम चल जाएगा.
So there seems to be some connectivity problem. Maybe just check. We were not able to hear you properly.
Okay, sir. वैसे यहाँ तो ठीक लग रहा है सब कुछ. अभी मैं दोबारा बोलूँ सर?
Yeah. So do you need additional RAM or additional hard disk?
No, sir. No additional RAM, no hard disk. बल्कि सर जो भी अपनी लोकल लैपटॉप की हार्ड डिस्क होगी ना, वो तो फ्री हो जाएगी, क्योंकि जब हम डाटा अपना वन ड्राइव पे डाल देंगे तो वो हमारी हार्ड डिस्क को यूज ही नहीं करेगा, स्पेस को यूज नहीं करेगा, सारा स्पेस वन ड्राइव का यूज होगा.
Right. I'll request you to speak in English. Many members are saying. CA Ramesh Sadani has a question: how much internet speed you are using? Does it require very high internet speed?
No, sir. No. Sir, in case we don't have any internet, in that case also we can do work, because OneDrive just synchronize the data whenever internet available.
Okay. CRC Garg has a question: if you give access to your cloud to your client, will they be able to see all of your data?
No, sir. No. We can allow them only their data. They will be able to see only their data, not all other clients.
Very good. So Sunil, in fact, we received 44 questions, and I combined the questions, and you answered all of them very well. In fact, there are 2,565 members who are viewing it live. And thank you so much. It was a very lively session through these question answers, and I'm sure that the members would have been benefited. Yes, you want to speak?
एक दो बातें और बताना चाह रहा हूँ मैं.
Please try to speak in English.
Okay, sir. Okay. So I want to share one more thing. When we uploaded the data of our client accounting data on the cloud, after that we are able to provide them all the information through a mobile app. They have a mobile app in their mobile, and through that app they are able to take print of all the ledgers, bills, any other information which they want from their accounting system. So they are very happy, sir, to whom we are providing the accounting service. All the clients are very happy because all the accounting information is in their hand in the mobile app. And it is possible only due to cloud service. And sir, we can maximize our practice through this accounting on cloud computing, because if we are doing accounting in cloud, then the client and we both are working on the same data, and we can provide our maximum service to the client.
So thank you very much, Sunil ji. The way you answered all the questions, and the simplicity in which you explained all the concepts, members. Looking at the fact that in a half an hour session we received 46 questions, that speaks voluminous about our members' interest on the day when the maximum sessions for union budget are going on. This is the 91st program of the Committee for Member in Practice, and so far more than 1 lakh members on various diverse topics have attended the webinars of the Committee for Member. Yes, Sunil, you want to speak?
Sir, so I want to add one or two more things. Sir, actually at present also my 95% friends are not using this cloud service or Microsoft 365. I requesting to all of them, please start using this cloud service. It is very helpful and very easy or very cost effective. There is no much cost. And when we will start this, it will give good result. And sir, in the beginning, there was problem for 2 months. So therefore, I will request them to start this in the lean period, not on the peak period. Because in the peak period, if we will start, then there will be problem. Now we can start this cloud computing. Because अभी हमारा 2021 वाला सारा काम लगभग खत्म हो चुका है, तो इस टाइम हमें शुरू करनी चाहिए, और ये जरूर शुरू करना चाहिए सर. ये मतलब एक पहला स्टेप है हमारी वो प्रैक्टिस बढ़ाने की तरफ और तरक्की की तरफ. क्योंकि अगर हम उसी में चिपके रहे ना सर, तो फिर बात नहीं बनेगी. हम मतलब दूसरों को बोलते रहे कि भाई ये हमारे को ये काम कम हो गया, जबकि काम इससे बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ सकता है. सर, एक मेरा फ्रेंड है, वो ऑस्ट्रेलिया की अकाउंटिंग करता है, तो वो जो ऑस्ट्रेलिया की अकाउंटिंग करता है ना सर.
सुनील जी, कैन यू स्पीक इन इंग्लिश?
Okay, sir, I will try. Sir, one of my friend is doing accounting for Australia client. His client drove information in OneDrive. He dragged from there and do the work, and then again he put his work in the OneDrive, and the client take from there. So like this, we can also do our work from for a remote client like Jammu, Bombay, Bangalore. With cloud computing, we can do work for client from all over the world. I want to just say this, sir.
Thank you so much, Sunil ji. Some members are asking for your contact number. If you can speak out your phone number or the mail ID as you wish.
Yes, sir. No problem. My phone number is 9810116346.
Just repeat it once more.
Yes, sir. I am repeating, sir. 9810116346.
Thank you very much, Sunil ji. It was a pleasure to have you here amongst us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. मेरे लिए भी ये बहुत खुशी की बात है, सर. आपने मौका दिया, इसके लिए मैं आपका थैंकफुल रहूंगा, सर, हमेशा.
Thank you very much, Sunil ji, and over to our young friend, Alok.
So thank you, Sunil ji, for the nice deliberation. I think it was a hot topic and demand of the day because a lot of small practitioners wants to establish their firms, and of course, cost is one of the criteria. Thank you, Sanjeev sir. So Sanjeev sir, chairman of the committee for member in practice, and of course my mentor, and vice chairman Prasanna sir, and committee for member in practice for giving me this opportunity to deliberate on a very I would say on a very demand of the day topic kind of thing, which is related party disclosure. So let me share my screen, and Anil ji, please confirm if my screen is visible.
Yes, your screen is visible.
Yeah. So once again, a very good evening to all of you, and thanks for joining this session at large. And this session is about related party transactions, disclosures, compliances, and recent changes. So if you see the theme of this particular session, it talks about the related party transactions. So it talks about what are the related party transactions, what are the relevant disclosures, what are the compliances, and what are the recent changes. So when we talk about the related party transaction, disclosure, compliances, and governance in India, so there are multiple authoritative guidance which talks about related party disclosures, transactions, and compliances. So of course, if we talk about accounting standard, so it is Ind AS 24, related party disclosure. Indian accounting standards are applicable to those companies who are of course listed companies, who are having a net worth of more than 250 crores. And these companies are subsidiary, JV, associate, and holding company of the companies on which Ind AS is applicable. So the authoritative guidance from the Ind AS standpoint is Ind AS 24, which talks about what is meant by related parties, what are the related party transactions, and how these transactions are going to be disclosed in the financial statement, in the notes to accounts of the financial statements. Then we have our old guidance, which is accounting standard 18, related party disclosure. So in India, two kind of standards are prevalent: accounting standard, which is applicable to non-corporate entities and which is applicable to small and medium enterprises, and the companies on which Ind AS is not applicable. So I can say that these are the small companies whose net worth is less than 250 crores, and these companies are not a listed companies. So again, AS 18 talks about what is meant by related party, who is the related party, what are the sort of related party transactions which are going to be covered in this particular session or in this particular standard. And if a transaction is incurred, if a transaction has been incurred with a related party, then what are the sort of disclosures which is required to be made in the financial statements? So this is the second one. Third, of course, I'll touch upon the Companies Act 2013. So when I say Companies Act 2013, this Companies Act is applicable to companies. And relating to related party compliances, section 2, subsection 76 talks about what is meant by a related party in context to a company. Section 2, subsection 77 talks about what is meant by related party in the context of a person. Then section 177 talks about the requirement of the audit committee, constitution of the audit committee, omnibus approval, so on and so forth. And section 188 of the Companies Act 2013 talks about what are the related party transactions which is getting covered under section 188 and on which approvals are required. So we will discuss that where audit committee approval is required, where board approval is required, or where shareholders approval is required. So we'll discuss that part also as far as compliances are concerned. For listed companies, Sebi is one of the regulator for listed companies, Securities Exchange Board of India. And Sebi Elodia Regulation 2015, so listing obligation disclosure requirements rules 2015. Regulation 2ZB of Sebi Elodia 2015 also talks about what is meant by related party. So it says that what is meant by related parties. Okay. And regulation 23 talks about what are the requirement of related party approval in case of related party transactions. So Sebi LODR is one of the authority which also governs that how this related party transaction is going to be monitored, this is going to be disclosed, and what are the sort of approvals which are required when a listed company is incurring any related party transaction. So this is the fourth one. So if you are able to look at the screen, you can see that there is Ind AS 24, which talks about the related party disclosures. I mean to say related parties, transactions, and disclosures. Accounting Standard 18 again, which talks about related party meaning, transactions, and disclosures. The Companies Act 2013 again, which talks about the meaning of related parties and approvals and kind of transactions on which approvals are required. Again, Sebi Elodia, which talks about what is meant by related parties. Again, what are the transactions and and how approval is required. So coming to these four different authoritative guidance, so there are different meanings. Of course, some could be common, but there are different meanings. I can take an example of a relative. A meaning of relative under section under Ind AS 24, under AS 18, and under section 2 subsection 77 of the Companies Act. So under these three scenarios, the meaning of relative is different. Of course, there are some common things are there, some common items are there, some common relatives are there, but the definition of relative is different in all these three scenarios to some extent. And last but not the least, direct and indirect tax laws. So everywhere you will read, if you read para in Ind AS 24, in Accounting Standard 18, in Companies Act section 188, in Sebi LODR, so you'll find that the word has been written that the transaction should be made in the ordinary course of business and at arm's length, right? So what is meant by arm's length? Whether Companies Act prescribe the meaning of arm's length, whether accounting standard, although everyone is touching the concept that it should be on arm's length, but no one is speaking about what is meant by arm's length. So where the meaning of arm's length has been derived from, where the meaning of arm's length, which authoritative guidance needs to be referred to identify that yes, this transaction is at arm's length. Yeah, if anyone who want to try. Okay, so coming to the meaning of arm's length, it is not defined in Sebi LODR, it is not defined in Ind AS, it is not defined in accounting standard, it is not defined in the Companies Act. So the method of identifying the arm's length or the method of benchmarking is given under OECD guidelines of Income Tax Act, and it is given under the transfer pricing provisions. So one needs to refer to the income tax provision to identify that what is arm's length, and they need to refer different mechanism which is there, like CUP method, comparable uncontrolled price method, retail sale price method, transactional net margin method, other method. So these methods are required to be referred from the OECD guidelines or from the transfer pricing provisions. So these are the five different things which we are going to discuss in today's session. Okay, so first I'll cover Ind AS 24 because there are a lot of participants who are from listed companies or who are from the big companies. Again, there are a lot of participants who are from practicing firms, and they have a very small clients or a mediocre clients, and the companies on which Ind AS is not applicable. So for their understanding, I'll also discuss AS 18, and then we will discuss these 3-4 provisions of Companies Act relating to related party, and then we are going to discuss the Sebi LODR, and of course we will be going to discuss two different notification and circular, which is dated 9th November 2021 and 22nd November 2021. So we are going to discuss these two notification and circular, because 9th November was the notification and 22nd November was the circular which was issued by Sebi. So now the important question arises, what is RPT compliance? And with my experience, I can say that related party compliance or related party disclosure is not only a concept or an activity for a large listed companies. It become a profile now. So if you have to be compliant, so you have to create a profile, or you have to have a person or a professional who is well versed with the related party compliance, and his maximum time will go on in identification of related party, in identification of related party transactions, in disclosure of related party transactions as per Ind AS, as per Companies Act, as per Sebi LODR, and even under Sebi LODR. So Sebi wants to on a half yearly basis, Sebi wants listed companies to file the related party transactions disclosures on a half yearly basis within 30 days from the date of publishing of results. And from 2022, so this 30 days becomes 15 days, and they are proposing from 1st April 2023 that on the date of publishing of results, related party transaction disclosure needs to be filed with the stock exchange on the same day when you are filing your results. So again speaking, related party is become a very huge concept now. Related party is not restricted to a Companies Act. Related party is when you talk about related party, so you have to see the every aspect and different angles of the related party as per the different authority and regulations. Coming to Sebi, so related party compliance is why important, because a related party transaction is something which is a transaction which is happening with the related party. And who is a related party? The party who are related to each other. And when someone is related to each other, he, she, or it can influence the transaction which is happening with them. Okay, so they are in the capacity of controlling the transaction, they are in the capacity of influencing the transaction, they are in the capacity of creating a nexus out of the transactions. Okay, because these transactions are happening with the parties who are already related, who are already relative. So existing parties are the related parties. So from the standpoint of better corporate governance, related party compliance along with disclosure is very important. From the perspective of this relationship influences the transaction between reporting entity and related party, again it is very important to disclose so that the user of the financial statement will be able to understand that what is the extent of the transaction which is happening with the related party, and whether these transactions are happening with the on an arm's length basis, and whether due process of approvals have been followed while entering into such kind of transactions. Okay, and the related party transactions are also impacting the transaction with the unrelated party. Okay, of course. So for example, there was a limited, A limited acquired B limited. Okay, so earlier B limited was taking some goods and services from a different vendor. A limited is into the same business. Now A become the parent of B limited, and A limited told B limited, you don't have to purchase any goods or services from that particular vendor, you have to purchase with me. Okay, so some or in a different way, these related party transactions are impacting the transactions with the unrelated party as well, in terms of price, in terms of volume, or in terms of business. Okay, so coming to the next aspect, which is very important, true and fairness of financial position and performance of the entity, because of course related party transactions are the transactions which is happening with the parties who are relative, the parties who can control these transactions, and how the financial statement in terms of financial position and performance are fair. So that is very important from the standpoint of the relevant disclosures and the compliances as per the authoritative guidance. Related party transaction also helps in taking informed decision to the stakeholders. I have seen an investor who was reading an annual report and he was saying, so the entire business of this company is with its subsidiary company or with its group company. This company does not have any client outside. So this company is not exposed to the open world. Okay, so if its parent gone, then the entire business will go out, or if its parent will be in stress, in that case probably the financial position of the subsidiary will also be impacted. So this is a risk concentrated company because the entire related party transaction are happening with a single company. Okay, so these are the things why related party transactions, disclosures, and compliances are very important. So first I'll start with Ind AS 24. And when I talk about accounting standard talks about how you will identify the related party relationship and transaction. So when I say how you will identify, I mean to say who are the related parties, and the transactions with those related parties with the reporting entity needs to be disclosed in the financial statements. Okay, and Companies Act talks about the approval process. Accounting standard does not talks about the approval process. Accounting standards only talks about the identification, transactions, and the way how these transactions are going to be disclosed. Okay, so this standard also talks about, when I say this standard, Ind AS 24 as well as accounting standard 18, it also talks about the disclosure of outstanding balances, including commitments between entity and the related party. So it does not only talks about the monetary thing, it also talks about the non-monetary thing. If a related party has given any commitment, has given any guarantee, even those kind of commitments, guarantee, comfort letter kind of thing is also required to be disclosed in the notes to accounts as per the accounting standards. It also talks about the circumstances in which disclosure is required. For example, if there is a parent and subsidiary company, so even though there is no transaction with the parent and subsidiary company, still the name of the subsidiary or name of the parent, the relationship with subsidiary or parent, uh, and what is the percentage which have been invested in that kind of subsidiary. So these things are required to be disclosed in the notes to accounts, irrespective of the fact whether transactions are there or not. And this standard also talks about the disclosure which is required to be made. Who could be the related party? As per Companies Act, as per AS, as per Ind AS, as per Sebi LODR, who could be the related party? The related party could be an individual, I mean to say a person, I mean to say a human being, or a related party could be an entity. So both could be a related party to the reporting entity. When I say related party to the reporting entity. Okay. And what are the related party transactions? So related party transactions could be transfer of resources, services, or obligations between a reporting entity and a related party, regardless of whether a price is charged or not. Same definition is there in the Sebi LODR as well. Same definition. The definition as per Ind AS, same definition is there in Sebi LODR as well. As far as Companies Act Section 188 is concerned, so Companies Act Section 188 does not define what is related party transaction. Section 188 defines what is contracts or arrangement. Okay. And there are 7 kind of transactions which are covered in Section 188 of the Companies Act. And of course, which includes transfer of materials, supply of services, sale of goods, leasing of properties, okay, and remuneration to the relatives, okay, underwriting commission. So these things are included in Section 188. We'll touch upon when we'll come to the Companies Act thing, okay. But the same definition is there in Sebi LODR as well. Apart from this definition, Sebi LODR has included some more related party transactions from the standpoint of approval and disclosure as per Sebi LODR. Okay. The examples are just on the right side: purchase or sale of goods, purchase or sale of property and other assets, rendering or receiving of services, leases, transfer of IPR in terms of research and development, you can say, transfer under license agreements, settlement of liabilities on the behalf of the entity or by the entity or on behalf of the related party. So these are the examples of related party transactions. So related party transactions could be a capital account transaction. Related party transactions could be a material services transaction. Related party transaction could be a financial transaction, loans given, loan taken. Related party transactions could be a IPR transactions. Related party transaction could be a human transaction like transfer of resources, right? As per Ind AS 24, for the reporting entity as a person, who could be the related party? So a person or a close member of that person's family. When I say close member of the person's family, just for the sake of understanding, I'll call it as a relative. Okay, just for the sake of understanding. Otherwise, standard use the word close member of the person's family. So a person or his relative, is related to a reporting entity, is a related party if that person or his relative, control the company, have a joint control over the company, have a significant influence over the company. So I'm talking about control, I'm talking about joint control, I'm talking about significant influence, and such person or his relative is a member of the key managerial personnel of the company or of the holding company. Okay. So for a reporting entity, who could be the related party? For a reporting entity, a person or his family or his relative could be a related party if he controls, joint controls, having a significant influence, and is a member of KMP either of that particular company or of a parent of that company, right? So in these 4 scenarios, that person will be a related party or his relative will be a related party of the reporting entity. Who is meant by close members in KMP? And I'll take some time, so I'll concentrate my some time over this particular slide. Who is a close members of the family? So in Ind AS, the word is close members of the family. In Companies Act and in accounting standard, the word is relative. Okay. So who is the close member of the family? That person's spouse. When I say spouse, husband, wife, or domestic partner. So this is again a Western or new concept which is added in Ind AS. Brother, sister, father, mother, children of that person or that person's spouse or domestic partner. Okay. So who is a related party? Spouse is a related party, and the same and the same definition of relative is there in the in accounting standard and in Companies Act. Okay, so husband wife are the related parties in all the scenarios. Okay, so you can't afford being a husband or a wife. So if for a husband, wife is of course a related party, and for wife, husband is of course a related party. Okay, so the regulators cannot afford this scenario that husband or wife will not be a related party. So guys, husband wife, so this is related party in all scenario. Brother sister, father mother, this is related party in all scenario. Okay, and children, so children of that person or that person's spouse or domestic partner is covered under Ind AS 24. But if I talk about the definition of relative under AS, so if you see the definition of relative under AS, so I'll cover the definition of relative under AS just right now, so that you will be able to understand the difference. So I have spoken that husband wife is related party, children son daughters are the related party, brother sister and father mother are the related party. Father mother, spouse, brother sister and children, I mean to say son daughter. So these are the related party as per accounting standard 18. And when I talk about Ind AS 24, so spouse is the related party including domestic partner. Son daughter are the related party of the spouse, be it husband, be it wife, and even the son daughter of domestic partner are also the related party. Brother sisters are the related party, father mother are the related party, and as per Ind AS, the dependent will also form part of the related party. Okay, the dependent of that person or that person's spouse. So like father-in-law, mother-in-law, if father-in-law and mother-in-law are dependent on the wife or dependent on the husband, so in that case, father-in-law, mother-in-law will also be the related party, right? But under accounting standard, father-in-law, mother-in-law, dependents are not the related party. If I talk about Companies Act, so in Companies Act, who will be the related party? So in Companies Act, spouse is there, father, mother is there, brother, sister is there, so kids are there. In addition to these, stepfather, stepmother, stepbrother, stepsister, stepson, stepdaughter. So all these steps are also included under the definition of relative under Companies Act. So I'll show you. Yes. So father, mother, brother, sister, son, daughter. Okay. And stepfather, stepmother, stepbrother, stepsister, son including stepson. Okay. So apart from these relationships, son's wife and daughter's husband is also included as a relative under Companies Act. Okay. And under Companies Act, if that person is of course having a HUF, so any member of HUF will also be the related party. So you can see the difference. Ind AS accounting standard, Companies Act section 2 subsection 77. The definition of relative is different to some extent. Okay. In Ind AS, the word domestic partner has been used. In Ind AS, the word dependent of the spouse have been used. In accounting standard, such things are not there. In accounting standard, simple father, mother, husband, wife, brother, sister, son, daughter. Simple. In Companies Act, stepfather, stepmother, stepbrother, stepsister, stepson, and daughters are included. Apart from that, son's wife and daughter's husbands are also included. Okay, so this is an extended definition of relative under Companies Act as well as Ind AS, right? Yes. Coming to the KMP definition. So KMP definition is somewhat similar in all the scenarios. So the person who is having authority and responsibility for planning, directing, and controlling the activities of the entity, directly or indirectly, including any director, whether executive or otherwise, of that particular entity. The only thing is, under accounting standard, the examples are given. Under Companies Act, in these KMPs, the extended definition of KMP is there under Companies Act. If I talk about accounting standard, so accounting standard says that managing director, whole-time director, or manager are one of the examples who are responsible for these activities and can be considered as a KMP. When you go to the Companies Act, section 2 subsection 76, it talks about MD, WTD, manager, CFO, company secretary, or any such person who is one line below the board of directors. Okay, who is reporting to the board, kind of thing. So that person can be known as a KMP. Okay, so this is the definition of KMP, key managerial personnel. Now we have discussed the meaning of person, relative, okay, who could be the related party to a reporting entity. Now we are going to talk about the reporting entity relationship with the entity. So now I'm talking about the two entity. Earlier I was talking about the individual, a person with who is a relative with the reporting entity, okay, who is related to the reporting entity. And then where we discussed that if a person or his relative control, joint control, significant influence, a KMP of the parent, so these entities are considered as a related party. And then we discussed who could be the relative. So we discussed the meaning of relative in all three different scenarios: accounting standard, Indian accounting standard, Companies Act, right? Now coming to the entity to entity relationship. So as per Ind AS 24 and even as per accounting standard also, okay, so if the two different entities are member of the same group, for example, parent company, subsidiary company, fellow subsidiary company. So parent, subsidiary and fellow subsidiary, I mean to say parent, child means subsidiary, and cousins or brother sister, fellow subsidiary. So these three entities are considered as an entity of the same group, okay, and these three entities are related to each other. For a parent, subsidiary and fellow subsidiary, I mean to say subsidiaries of the parent are the related parties. For a subsidiary, parent is the related party and fellow subsidiaries are also related party. For a fellow subsidiary, such subsidiary and parent are also the related party. So these three set of entities are related to each other, right? So then the transactions incurred with such entities are considered as a related party transaction, and such transactions are required to be disclosed in the notes to accounts. And when you are incurring such transactions with such related party, then you have to take approval and you have to comply as per the requirements of section 188 of the Companies Act. And if you are a listed company, you have to comply the requirements of regulation 23 or other regulations of the Sebi Elodia 2015 amended from time to time. Yeah. So second, one is an associate or JV of the other, okay, or an associate or JV of a member of a group of which the other entity is a member, okay. For example, for X Limited, Y is a JV and Z is an associate. So this Y and Z is a related party for X Limited, okay. Or for X Limited, if Y and Z are the associate and joint venture of the fellow subsidiary, even though Y and Z is related to the X Limited, right? So this is related to the X Limited. Clear? Third, both are joint venture of the same third party. If B Limited and C Limited, both these entities are JV of A Limited, then B are considered as a related party because these two entities are jointly controlled by a single joint venturer, okay. So this is considered as a related party. Clear? Fourth, one entity is a JV of the third entity and other entity is an associate of the third entity. So A Limited is a investor or a venturer company. B Limited is a JV of A Limited. C Limited is an associate of A Limited. So in this case, B and C are the related party. Okay. Of course, for A Limited, B and C are the related party, but here B and C are also the related party, right? Last, not last, fifth one, the entity is controlled or jointly controlled by a person identified earlier. So we have identified some person earlier where we have told if a person is having a control, joint control, significant influence, okay, so that person will be considered as a related party. So if the entity is controlled or jointly controlled by a person identified earlier, okay, for example, Mr. A is having a control in B Limited and Mr. A is also having a joint control in C Limited. So in this case, B and C are the related parties because the common person is Mr. A and this B is controlled by Mr. A and C is jointly controlled by Mr. A, okay. A person who is having control or joint control of the entity has significant influence over the entity or is a member of the KMP of the entity or its parent. For example, Mr. A. So Mr. A controls B Limited and Mr. A is also having a significant influence over C Limited, or Mr. A is KMP of C Limited. Okay, so in this case, B Limited and C Limited are the related party, right? The entity or any member of a group of which it is a part provides KMP services to the reporting entity or to the parent of the reporting entity. For example, X Limited is the parent of Y Limited. So X Limited is a parent, Y Limited is a subsidiary, and it's a reporting entity. So Y Limited and Z Limited are related parties. So this is X, this is Y. X is parent, Y is subsidiary. Okay, and there is a different company, Z Limited. So this Y and Z will be related party if either Z or any entity who is a member of the group of Z, I mean to say Z's parent, Z's subsidiary or fellow subsidiary, I mean to say parent of Z, Z himself or Z's fellow subsidiary. If these entities are providing KMP services either to Y or either to X, okay, so these entities Z Limited and Y Limited is a related party, right? Right? Coming to the special consideration, of course, what is the meaning of associate? So associate meaning is defined under the different accounting standard. So associate means when an investor is having a significant influence over an entity, it is considered as an associate. What is a joint venture? Again, joint venture is defined under Ind AS 111 and accounting standard 27. And it says that who is a joint venture? So when an entity is controlled by the joint venturer, when there is a contractual right, and of course there is a contract for and that right is unanimous, so that is known as a joint venture. So associate includes subsidiary of associate, JV includes subsidiary of JV. Okay, and who could not be the related party? So there is a little difference between the accounting standard, I mean to say Ind AS and Companies Act. So two entities, if they have a common directors, so just due to common directorships, the entities cannot say that the two different entities are related party. For example, there are independent director who could be the director in more than 10 companies, or let's say 15 companies. So one director is on the board of Reliance and the same director is on the board of Bharti Airtel. So just due to the fact that these two directors are sitting on two different groups, so these two groups cannot be the related party. Okay, so just sitting in a room and just talking about the related party transaction is not a simple task. This related party transactions disclosures requires a mammoth exercise, because you need to see who could be the related party. So you have seen that even a person whose relative is engaged in some activity with a company, that relative could be the related party. Okay, so it's not a simple task, it's a humongous task to identify the related party relationship in the large complex group, in the large listed setups. So a member of the KMP of one entity has a significant influence over the another entity. So for example, I am an MD of a company and I am having a significant influence in another company. So just I am a KMP in one company and having a significant influence in another company. So these two companies cannot be the related party. Two venturers having joint control over a joint venture. Classic example, Industar Limited is a listed company and the promoters of the company are Bharti Airtel and Vodafone Group PLC. So just due to the fact that Bharti Airtel and Vodafone Group shares some investment in Industar Limited and they are the promoters or joint venturer of Industar Limited, due to this fact, this Bharti Airtel and Vodafone Group are not the related parties. Okay, so you cannot say that because they have a common joint venture and hence these two ventures are the related parties. So this will not be the case. Provider of finance, trade unions, public utilities, department, agency of government that does not control, jointly control, or significantly influence the reporting entity. So of course, a franchisor, a person who is providing a finance, trade unions, public utilities, these kind of things are outside the ambit of the related party relationship. A customer, supplier, franchisor, distributor, you have a customer who is having a, let's say 40% of the sale of an entity, and that customer is not a related party, and just due to the fact that he is one of the largest customer, he does not become a related party. Of course, the disclosure requirement as per segment reporting under Ind AS 108 will follow, but as far as related party disclosures and compliances are concerned, due to the fact that he is the largest vendor, he is the largest supplier, distributor, franchisor, a customer, he or she will not be the related party, or that company will not be the related party. Coming to the disclosure, we have discussed that parent subsidiary relationship, it has to be disclosed. Doesn't matter there is a transaction or not, but you have to disclose who is the parent, who is the subsidiary, what is the relationship, okay, and who will be the ultimate controlling party. These kind of things are required to be disclosed in the notes to accounts. KMP compensation, of course, who are the key managerial personnel, for example, CEO and MD of the company, CFO, company secretary, or board of directors, and who are the KMPs. So these, the KMP's remuneration has to be disclosed in 5 parts: short-term employee benefits, long-term employee benefits, other retirement benefits, post-employment benefits, and share-based payments. So if ESOPs have been given to these KMPs, and of course in large listed companies and in startups, so normally ESOPs have been given to these KMPs. Related party transactions disclosure. So what is required to be disclosure? Of course, amount of transaction is required to be disclosed. And when I say amount of transaction, sorry, so transactions during the period is required to be disclosed, and outstanding balances as at and outstanding balance as at end of the reporting period is required to be disclosed. And when I say transaction, it could be a sale of services, it could be a sale of material, it could be a transfer of resources, it could be a lease, it could be a reimbursement. So these could be the kind of disclosures. And when I say outstanding balances, so of course loan given, loan taken, trade receivables, trade debtors, okay. So these kind of things are required to be disclosed in the notes to accounts as a related party transaction. And the related party transaction has to be defined separately, has to be shown separately. For example, पेरेंट के साथ मेरी कितनी ट्रांजैक्शन है, सब्सिडरी के साथ मेरी कितनी ट्रांजैक्शन है, मेरी एसोसिएट के साथ कितनी है, एंटिटीज हैविंग सिग्निफिकेंट इन्फ्लुएंस के साथ कितनी है, केएमपी के साथ कितनी है. सो कैटेगरी वाइज यू नीड टू डिस्क्लोज द रिलेटेड पार्टी ट्रांजैक्शंस. एंड ऑफ कोर्स व्हाइल डिस्क्लोजिंग द रिलेटेड पार्टी ट्रांजैक्शन यू हैव टू डिस्क्लोज नेम ऑफ द रिलेटेड पार्टी, उसका नाम क्या है, व्हाट इज द रिलेशनशिप विद द रिलेटेड पार्टी, ओके. And if the control has been exist or control has been diluted, so from when the control was seized and when the control was started, so these kind of disclosure needs to be disclosed. For example, my related party is my customer, and that customer is not paying me any money, so I have created a provision for doubtful debt over the customer, okay. So in Ind AS, expected credit loss model is there. In accounting standard, we are just we are just following a conservative accounting. So if we have provided provision for bad debts or bad debts to that particular customer, so such item is also required to be disclosed in the notes to account, so that the user will be able to understand that this company has created a provision of its own group company, okay. So that is also required to be disclosed. If there is any guarantees, any commitments, so that is also required to be disclosed. Arm's length transaction, you are required to disclose that yes, the transactions are on arm's length basis. This is a disclosure of Tata Steel Limited, which I have extracted from their annual report. And when you see this disclosure, so they have disclosed the related party transactions as subsidiaries, associate, joint venture, and their Tata Sons Private Limited, its subsidiaries and joint venture. So you can see the categories: purchase of goods, sale of goods, service received, service rendered, interest income recognized, interest expenses recognized, dividend paid, dividend received, provision recognized for receivables during the year, management contracts, sale of investments, okay. Finance provided during the year, outstanding loans and receivables, provision for outstanding loans and receivables, outstanding payables, guarantees provided outstanding, sale of fixed assets. And there are some qualitative disclosure as well in this particular disclosures. Then they have given the name of the subsidiary, associate, and joint venture, their country of incorporation, their relationship like subsidiary companies, associate and joint venture, and as on March 31st, 2020, and in the comparative period, what is the percentage of stake they are maintaining in that company. So friends, we have completed the what is meant by related party transaction, what is related party, what is relative, what are the related party transactions which is going to be disclosed in the notes to accounts. Quickly, we will cover accounting standard 18 for the audience who are more interested in accounting standard as well. So AS 18 talks about which kind of relationships could be the related party relationships. So it says that a control, I mean to say parent subsidiary relationships, okay. Common control, for example, holding, subsidiary, and fellow subsidiary. So again, a member of the group is considered as a related party. Associate or joint venture, if I am a company and I have invested, let's say 25% stake in another company, So that company will be my associate if I would have a significant influence. For example, I'm a company and with my partner, I have invested 50-50 and I have made a joint arrangement kind of thing. So that joint venture is also a related party for me. Individuals owning interest in voting power, giving control, significant influence over the reporting entity and relative of such individuals. Very simple. I am a person and I have a control over a company. I have a significant influence over a company. So of course I am a related party because I'm having a control or significant influence. My entire relative are also related party for this company. Now the question arises. For example, I do have 50 relative, father, mother, brother, sister, spouse, okay, my kids, okay. So for example, I have 50 relatives. So do I need to disclose the name of the 50 relatives in the notes to accounts? Do I need to disclose that? Answer is no. You are required to disclose the name of only those relatives with whom the company has entered into the transaction. Okay, so these kind of relatives are only required to be disclosed. Everyone is not required to be disclosed. The entire laundry list is not required to be disclosed in the notes to accounts. Rather, those relatives, those related parties, apart from your subsidiary parent, those related parties with whom the company has a transaction anytime during the period is required to be disclosed. Okay, or the company has outstanding balances during the end of the period, right? KMP and the relative. I am a KMP of the company. All my relative will cover as a related party. Enterprises over which any of the above persons are able to exercise significant influence. I am the KMP of the company, and if I am having a significant influence over another company, so that company is also considered as a related party. So these two companies are considered as a related party. So this kind of structure was not there in Ind AS. In Ind AS, if there is a KMP and that person is having a significant influence in another company, so these two companies are not a related party. But in accounting standard, if I am a KMP of a company, I am having a significant influence over a third company, so this second and third company are related parties. Okay, followings are deemed not to be related party. Who are not a related party? Two companies, simply common director. And if this could be a related party, then this entire world and every big company of this world will be a related party, because you can see some common directors on the board of these companies. Okay, single customer, supplier, franchisor, distributor, we have discussed, these are not considered as a related party. Provider of finance, trade union, etc., in the course of normal dealings are not considered as a related party. And these are some exempted disclosure. If some regulators or regulations stops or conflict with the disclosure of related party transactions from the perspective of confidentiality, so accounting standard says that just respect that confidentiality and don't disclose that fact. Okay, in consolidated financial accounts, this parent and subsidiary relationships are getting eliminated. For example, the company has sold some goods to a subsidiary, and this transaction will be eliminated in the console books. So in the console books, in the CFS, the parent subsidiary transactions are not required to be disclosed, because these transactions got eliminated in the console accounts. Control definition is again same. The entity is having more than 50% of the voting power of the entity. So this control definition is subjective in case of Ind AS, but in accounting standard it is more straightforward. And if an entity is having more than 50% of the voting power, the entity control the composition of the board of directors. Okay, so these kind of entities can be demonstrated as yes, these entities have a control over the another entities. Significant influence, normally it is considered that if an entity is having a more than 20% of the voting power in another entity, then significant influence is pre-assumed. It is presumed. Okay, provided such entity will say that no, I'll not possess, I'll not carry significant influence. So the onus is on that company that that company has to prove I am having 25% stake, but I'm not having any significant influence. I'm not having any participative rights. Okay, and if it is less than 20% power, again the ownership is on that company, that the company need to prove I am having a 18%, but yes, I am having a 18% stake, but yes, I am having a significant influence. So I still remember when I was working with HSBC, so Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation Limited was having an associate which is Bank of Communication of China. So the percentage stake was 19%, and that was considered as an associate. KMP, I have told you, the person who is responsible for taking authority and responsibility for planning, directing, controlling activities of the reporting entity. And in accounting standard, in Ind AS, no examples are given, but in accounting standard, some examples are given in this KMP definition. It says that managing director, whole-time director, manager, etc. Okay, a non-executive director should not be considered as KMP by virtue of the fact that he is a director. KMP remuneration is also required to be disclosed under AS 18. So relative we have discussed, and we have found that the definition of relative is little squeezed under accounting standard in comparison to Ind AS. So in Ind AS, the relative definition is much larger in comparison to AS. Disclosure we have discussed. For parent subsidiary, doesn't matter the transaction is there or not, this relationship has to be disclosed. And if there is a transaction between the related parties, I have told you that you are not required to give the entire list. Otherwise, it will be a humongous and cumbersome task, and it will not add any value to the user of the financial statement, right? Because they are not interested in knowing the fact that this person has a 5 sons or 5 daughters. So the user is not able to is interested in knowing this. The user is interested in knowing that if this person is a KMP of the company and his son, who is a relative, so the company is giving a remuneration of 1 crore rupees to that particular person. Okay, so user of the financial statement, regulators are interested in this fact, and regulators are not interested in how many kids that person is having. Okay, so name of the related party, relationship, description of the nature of transaction, is it a sale of goods, sale of services, investment made? Okay, so guarantees, reimbursements. Okay, so rentals paid, commission paid. So these kind of description of the nature of transactions are required to be given. Volume of transaction in terms of either absolute amount or proportion is required to be given. And any important terms and conditions, which is important to understand the substance of the related party transaction, is important to given. Any outstanding balances are also required to be disclosed. If there is any provision for doubtful debt, so that is also required to be disclosed. So I have the comparison between Ind AS and AS, but I'm not taking this comparison. This is already there. This we have already covered, this sort of comparison. So of course, as far as relative is concerned, so relative is, the definition of relative is little extended in Ind AS in comparison to accounting standard. When I talk about KMP, so Ind AS talks about KMP of the company, I mean to say reporting entity, as well as KMP of the holding company as well. But under accounting standard, it only talks about the KMP of the company. So under Ind AS, the word used is close member of a family of a person, but under AS, the word used is relatives of an individual. Okay, so Ind AS 24 requires to disclose that you have to disclose the name of the next most senior parent who produced consolidated financial statement. Okay, so this is a separate disclosure, but accounting standard does not require such disclosure. So these are the differences between Ind AS and AS. Yeah, so now we are moving to Companies Act. So Anilji, just if you can confirm, so everything is going good? I'm properly audible? Yeah. So friends, as far as Companies Act is concerned, so in Companies Act, we are talking about 3 things. One, we are talking about section 2 subsection 76, which talks about the meaning of related party in the context of a company. Section 2 subsection 77, this talks about the meaning of related party in terms of a person. Okay, then we will be talking about 177. Of course, it says that what is the requirement of audit committee, so how this audit committee is going to be constituted, the requirement of omnibus approval and all, what are the roles and responsibilities of the audit committee, and of course section 188, which is very important, which says that what are the related party transactions, and how these disclosures, how these approvals are required to be made in case of related party transactions. So friends, as far as section 2 subsection 76 is concerned, related party with reference to a company means a director or his relative. So the director who is sitting on the board of the company is a related party for that company. If a company is paying any money to the director, So that has to be shown as a related party transaction. And the relative of the directors are also the related party. And we have already understood the meaning of relative, right? So we have seen the meaning of relative. Who is a relative? Father, mother, brother, sister, spouse, I mean to say husband, wife, and son, daughter. So stepfather, stepmother, stepbrother, stepsister, stepson, stepdaughter, all these are also related party. And apart from these related parties, daughter's husband and son's wife is also a related party. And if that person is having an HUF, so any member of HUF is a related party. Okay, so this is the definition of a relative under section 2 subsection 77. So any director or his relative will be a related party. KMP in relation to a company means, so KMP again. So there is an illustrative list of KMP which is given in the Companies Act, and KMP Companies Act says that CEO, managing director, or manager as per Companies Act. Okay, CEO, MD, and manager, the company secretary, the whole-time director, and the CFO. These are considered as a KMP, and such other officer not more than one level below the directors who is in whole-time employment designated as a KMP by the board. So for example, there is a senior vice president or vice president in the company, and that vice president is responsible for doing a presentation in the board, and that vice president is responsible for having an authority and responsibility in planning, directing of the business of the company, and that VP has been authorized by the board as a KMP. So that person is also considered as a KMP as per Companies Act. Okay, so comparing Ind AS to AS to Companies Act, the definition is much more extended and covered, and the coverage is much more wide in comparison to the earlier two scenarios. So friends, for example, ABC Limited is a reporting entity, and Mr. A is a director of ABC Limited. So of course, in this case, Mr. A is a related to ABC Limited, and relative of Mr. A is also related to ABC Limited. For example, Mr. B is KMP, so Mr. B is of course relative of ABC Limited, and Mr. Y is a relative of Mr. B, so Mr. Y is also related to ABC Limited, right? A firm in which director, manager, or his relative is a partner. For example, I am a company, okay, and my director, and the relative of my director is a manager, I am a company, and my director, my manager, or relative of my director, relative of my manager is a partner in a firm. So that firm will be related to me. Okay, that firm will be related to this company, right? So for a firm and for a company, who is common? So for a company, he is a director or manager and his relatives, and in the firm, this director, manager, or his relatives are the partner. So if this director, manager, or relative are the partner in this firm, these two things, these two entities like this company and the firm are the related party. A private company in which a director or manager or his relative is a member or director. For example, I am a director of ABC Limited, ABC Private Limited. I am also a director of XYZ Private Limited. Okay, so two private limited companies are there. So I am on the board of both the companies. So these two companies are considered as a related party. Okay, or for example, I am on the board of ABC Limited, and my relative, my father, is on the board of PQR Limited. So again, ABC and PQR are the related party, right? A public company, same example, but in case, so in private company there was no question of shareholding. There was no question of having a more than 2% of paid up capital or 1% of paid up capital. But in the public company, same example. So I am a director in ABC Limited, it is a public company, and my father is a director in PQR Limited, again a public company. So just by virtue of the fact that myself and my relative are directors in two different companies, two different public companies, these public companies cannot be a related party. So what is the area of consideration which needs to be taken into account? So for a public company, apart from directorship, there must be a shareholding as well. So if I am a director in a company and myself or my relative are director in another public limited company, and both of us, for example, I am holding 1.5%, my relative is holding 0.5%, so both of us are holding cumulatively more than 2% of the paid up capital of that company, then these two companies are considered as a related party, right? Any body corporate, so any body corporate whose board is working on the direction of my MD, my whole-time director, my manager, my director. So if the board of the company is functioning on the direction of my director or my manager, then such companies are also considered as a related party. The only exception is such instructions should not be in the professional capacity. Okay, so I'm not instructing them as a chartered accountant, I am instructing them as a director of this company. Okay, last one, any person who is advising me, I mean to say my board, that how to act, so in that case that person is also considered as a related party too, right? So friends, we have discussed this. Any body corporate which is a holding subsidiary associate, okay, subsidiary of a holding company which is a fellow subsidiary. So this talks about holding subsidiary, JV associate. Okay, so for holding subsidiary related party, subsidiary holding related party, JV venturer related party, venturer JV related party, investor associate related party. Okay, fellow subsidiaries related party. Subsidiaries of the associate are also related parties, subsidiary of the joint venture are also related party, right? Or such other person age may be prescribed, like a director other than an independent director or KMP of the holding company or his relative with reference to a company shall be deemed to be a related party. Okay, for example, ABC is a reporting entity, PQR is a parent company. Okay, and Mr. A is a director of holding company. Okay, and Mr. B is a KMP of PQR Limited. So Mr. A is a director of PQR Limited and Mr. X is a relative of Mr. A. Mr. X is a relative of Mr. A. So then these entities are also considered as a related party to the ABC Limited, right? Relative we have discussed. So friends, coming to the section 188 of the Companies Act 2013, and again it is very important to understand. So section 188 says that in case of a related party transaction in a company, so where this audit committee setup is there, so audit committee approval is required in all the cases. Audit committee approval is required. Okay, be it in the form of omnibus approval, or if omnibus approval has not been taken, the transaction has to be ratified in the 3 months time. Okay, so when I say omnibus approval, so omnibus approval means the omnibus approval for a year can be taken for the recurring nature of transaction. For example, I have a customer who is a related party, and every year I am selling goods to my customer. Okay, so it is a long-term customer. So I know that I'm going to incur, let's say, 1500 crore transaction with that customer. So I can go to the audit committee with, of course, some justifications, and I can go to the audit committee and I can take a omnibus approval, blanket approval, that dear audit committee, this is the entity who is my related party, and this is the kind of transaction which I am entering on with the related party. So I am doing this transaction in the ordinary course of business, and this transaction is at arm's length. These are the terms and conditions of this transaction, and in this year I'm going to incur roughly 1500 crores of transaction with this entity. So please provide me omnibus approval. So audit committee, after due diligence, they will provide an omnibus approval, and that is good to go. But in some cases, so in section 188, there are 7 kind of transaction which is prescribed as a related party transaction. So if the entity is entering into such transactions, okay, but the transaction is not in the ordinary course or arm's length. So the first condition is, if you are entering into a transaction with the related party, so you have to go for audit committee approval, provided the transaction should be in the ordinary course of business and it should be on the arm's length. Okay. If the transaction is not in the ordinary course of business and not on the arm's length, then apart from audit committee, you have to go to the board. You have to go to the board of directors for the approval. And for example, the company has entered into a transaction with a related party, and the transaction is either not on the arm's length or not in the ordinary course of business, and the transaction is breaching some threshold also, and the transaction is exceeding some threshold also. In that case, apart from audit committee, board, the entity has to go to the shareholders for approval. The entity has to go to the shareholders for approval. And I can tell you, when it goes to the shareholders for approval, so the interested parties, if the parties who are the shareholder, and these parties are interested parties, I am the shareholder of the company and this transaction is relating to my remuneration. So in that case, such agenda will not come to me for the voting. Okay. So interested party cannot vote in the agenda on which they are interested. Okay. So it will goes to the non-interested shareholders. Okay. So friends, which kind of transaction are prescribed under section 188? Sale, purchase or supply of any goods or material, leasing of property of any kind, availing or rendering of any services, appointment of any agent for purchase, sale of goods, materials, services or property. For these four transactions, the threshold is 10% turnover or more. For example, as per the last audited financial, my turnover is 1000 crores. What is the 10%? 100 crores. So if I am exceeding 100 crore by these transactions, in that case, I have to go to the shareholders for approval if such transaction will either not in the ordinary course of business or not on the arm's length basis. Okay, not on the ordinary course of business or not on the arm's length basis. So Alok, if the transaction is breaching the threshold, but but the transaction is in the ordinary course of business and on the arm's length basis, then you are not required to go to anywhere. Then you are not required to go anywhere. The audit committee approval is more than sufficient, provided the transaction should be on arm's length basis and it should be in the ordinary course of business. Okay. So friends, audit committee approval is required when the transaction is in arm's length and ordinary course of business. And if the transaction is not in the ordinary course or arm's length of business and transaction is not exceeding threshold, it will go to the board for approval. And if the transaction is not in the ordinary course of business or on the arm's length basis and it is also exceeding threshold, then it will go to the shareholders for approval. Okay. And these kind of thresholds are given for these different transactions: selling, buying or disposing of any property, 10% of net worth or more, related party appointment to any office or place of profit in the company, its subsidiary company or associate company. So what is meant by office or place of profit? If to a related party, any amount has to be given in addition to the remuneration which is justified, or in addition to the remuneration which has to be given to him or her, so that position is known as an office or place of profit. So if that remuneration has been given to such person for more than 2.5 lakhs per month, okay, in that case it will go to the shareholders for approval, provided the transaction is not in the ordinary course or arm's length basis. Underwriting the subscription or any security or derivative of the company, 1% of the net worth. So these are the threshold which is given in the Companies Act 2013, right? Clear, friends? Understood? So omnibus approval has to be taken from audit committee for recurring nature of transaction and for the transaction to the extent of 1 crore rupees if it is a projected or estimated transaction. And for every transaction it will go to the audit committee for approval. Okay, provided it should be on an ordinary course and on arm's length basis. If it is not in the ordinary course and not on the arm's length basis, but it is within the threshold, it will go to the board for approval. But if it is not in arm's length or not in ordinary course and it is exceeding threshold, when I say exceeding threshold, these threshold for these transactions, it will go to the shareholders for approval, right? If there is a transaction between parent and subsidiary which is getting eliminated in the consolidated financial statement, so whatever will be the volume of the transaction, for such transaction shareholder approval is not required. Okay. Now we are coming to the Sebi Elodia regulation 2015, which is amended in 2021. So when I say which is amended in 2021, I'm only concerned about the related party amendments. Although there are some other amendments as well, but here I'm only talking about the related party amendments in Sebi Elodia Regulations 2015. So friends, Sebi is the, as we have discussed, that Sebi is the regulator for listed companies. And in the last couple of months, like primarily in the month of November, so to be precise, on 9th November and 22nd November, so Sebi had just tightened the rules of related party compliances, approvals, and these rules or this approval process becomes more stringent. Okay. So although there are some gray areas in these kind of new rules on which the clarification from Sebi is awaited. When I say awaited, of course, the companies are struggling that how these things are going to be complied with. Okay. So they are discussing with their consultants, they are discussing with their chartered accountants, company secretary, legal counsels, and these amendments, some of these amendments are applicable from 1st April 2022. Okay. So just 58 days from now, these amendments will be applicable. So the time is very less to comply with these amendment. And of course, there are some areas where ambiguity is there, where the clarification is not there. Okay. So why Sebi has tightened the related party compliances and related party approval processes? Of course, friends, when there is a threat, there will be an opportunity. And of course, there will be a compliance pressure when there is a non-compliance, which is looked by the regulators. And that could be one of the reasons why Sebi is so harsh on this related party compliances, because related party compliances are the compliances where the transactions are getting controlled by a few parties who are in the dominating position or who are in the influencing position. So that could be the reason why Sebi is so harsh on these related party compliances. When I say why Sebi is so harsh, so I'm of course talking about why Sebi is so worried about the related party compliance and approval process to make it more stringent, to make it more robust, so that the non-compliance will not be there. Okay. But at the same time, these regulation or these amendments make this compliance process more cumbersome, because it is very difficult to identify the related parties first of all, and then the related party transactions, because in large complex setup or in case of a large listed companies, there could be a huge related parties. Okay. So according to regulation 2 sub regulation ZB, just give me a second. Yeah. So according to regulation 2 sub regulation ZB of Sebi Elodia regulation 2015, so again in Sebi Elodia this related party is again defined. Okay. And this is more of a comprehensive definition. So I was still wondering, so why Sebi has given this third kind of scenario, although everything is getting covered in the Companies Act, in the accounting standard, but still Sebi has its own related party identification as well. So apart from these two guidance, so this regulation says that related party as per Sebi regulation means a related party which is as per Companies Act. So whatever we have learned in Companies Act, related parties 276, 277. Okay. So 276, these are covered here. Whatever we have learned, the related party as per applicable accounting standard. So we have discussed Ind AS 24 and accounting standard 18. And Sebi has also taken the cognizance of compliance or related party identification as per these standard. Apart from this, Sebi has just given third thing also, and Sebi has told that apart from this, if there is any person or entity who is belonging to the promoter group, if there is any person or any entity who is a promoter group entity of the listed entity and holding 20% or more of the shares in the listed entity. Okay. So if there is an entity or a person belongs to a promoter group and the promoter group is having more than 20% stake in the listed entity, then that entity will also be considered as a related party, and the transaction disclosure approval process compliances that has to be followed for such related party as well. Now friends, wide regulation, wide notification dated 9th November 2021, this definition of related party has been a little bit changed. And when I say changed, of course it has been extended to some extent, right? So earlier the definition was a promoter or promoter group would be deemed to a related party if such entity held more than 20% shareholding in the listed entity, right? But as far as the amendments are concerned, so amendment says that if an individual or an entity form part of the promoter group, then irrespective of the shareholding, it has to be deemed to be a related party. So this 20% has to be replaced with the irrespective of the shareholding, right? Second, any person or entity holding more than 20%. So first, for a promoter or promoter group, the criteria of shareholding has been deleted. Okay. Second, any person or entity who is holding more than 20%. So he is not belongs to promoter or promoter group, but any entity who is holding 20% or more is considered as a related party, but this amendment will be applicable from 1st April 20. So any person or entity which is holding more than 20%, that will also be considered as a related party with effect from 1st April 2022. And this shareholding has been downside to. This shareholding has been reduced to 10% with effect from 1st April 2023. So from 1st April 2022, any person or entity belonging to the promoter group is a related party. Any person or entity who is having more than 20% equity shares directly or indirectly in the previous financial year, okay, will be a related party. Okay, so this is from 1st April 2022. From 1st April 23, any individual, any person or entity forming part of promoter or promoter group, related party. Any person or entity having more than 10% is a related party with effect from 1st April 2023, right? So these are the two changes in Sebi Elodia regulations. Coming to the definition of RPT. So what is meant by definition of RPT? And Sebi Elodia says that related party transaction means transfer of services, obligation, okay? And so transfer of resources, services, and obligation between a listed entity and a related party. But with effect from 1st April 2023, okay? With effect from 1st April 2023, some more complex scenario has been added, but with effect from 1st April 2022, the transactions between, so earlier we are only talking about the transaction between listed entity and the related party, but now if there is a subsidiary of the listed entity, for example, this is a listed entity, it has a subsidiary. So if the subsidiary is having any transaction with the related party of a listed entity, for example, I am a Bharti Airtel Limited, I have a subsidiary Bharti Hexacom Limited, okay? So this Bharti Hexacom Limited is a related party of listed entity, although it is unlisted, but it is a related party of listed entity. And this is an entity who is a subsidiary of Bharti Airtel Limited. So if an entity is having a transaction with the subsidiary of the listed entity, so that transaction will also comes into play as far as related party transactions are concerned. So listed company and its subsidiaries RPT. If a listed company is having any transaction with the related party of the subsidiary company, so that will be covered. Earlier only listed entity and related party, now listed entity and related party of the listed company subsidiary. So this transaction is also covered as far as approvals and compliances are concerned. What does it mean? It means if a listed company is entering into any transaction with the subsidiaries related party, so that transaction will require audit committee approval, and if it is meeting a materiality threshold, so it will require a shareholder approval as well. Second, listed company subsidiary. So there is a transaction between a listed company subsidiary and a related party of the listed company. So if the listed company subsidiary is doing any transaction with the related parties of the listed companies, there is no role of listed companies. So this subsidiary is entering into a transaction with the related party of the listed company. Again, in the listed companies compliance and approval process, this transaction has also been taken into the consideration. Listed company subsidiary and subsidiaries RPT. So there is no role of listed company. Listed company is having a subsidiary, and that subsidiary is having some transaction with its related parties. So these transactions are also covered under the ambit of related party transactions. Okay. So I'm not touching on 1st April 2023, but these are the changes. So now the transaction between listed entity and related party, Now it is not restricted to that. Now, if a transaction is there with the listed company's related party and the subsidiary of the related party, that has also been covered. Now, the transaction between listed company and subsidiaries RPT, it has also been covered. Now, the transaction between listed company subsidiary and subsidiaries related party, it has also been covered, right? Transactions not considered to be RPT. And SEBI is kind enough to exempt some transactions that, guys, if these are the transactions, you are not required to take a related party approvals. So for example, issue of specified securities on a preferential basis, uniform offers to all shareholders like dividend, subdivision or consolidation of securities, right issue, bonus issue, buyback, okay, acceptance of deposit by banks or NBFCs subject to certain conditions. So these kind of transactions are excluded from the ambit of the related party transaction from the compliance perspective, right? Coming to the material related party transaction. So earlier there was a requirement in the regulation, if there is a transaction with a related party which is exceeding 10% of the consolidated turnover as per the latest audited financials. For example, the consolidated turnover of the company is 10,000 crores and the transaction with the related party is 1,500 crore, which is more than 10%. So such transactions required shareholder approval. Okay. So when I say shareholder approval, it is non-interested shareholder approval. Okay. So SEBI has just put a quantitative amount also, and instead of 10% of the consolidated turnover, they have added 10% of the consolidated turnover or 1,000 crore, whichever is lower. So for example, in case of a large scale companies where they have a turnover of, let's say Reliance Industries have a turnover of 5 lakh crore. So 10% becomes 50,000 crores. So earlier, whatever which is out of 50,000 crore, that will be covered as a material related party transaction and it goes to shareholder approval. But now anything beyond 1,000 crore will come into the ambit of a related party approval, which goes to the shareholders. So friends, just discussing these kind of provision, these are not an easy provision. So identifying these kind of related parties and having these kind of compliances will be very cumbersome task. Okay. Increased scope of audit committee approval. So SEBI Elodia circular, these amended circular also requires that SEBI has given an power to audit committee that in case of a material modification, okay, it goes to shareholder for approval. And what is meant by material modification, SEBI has not defined. Okay. And SEBI has given power to audit committee. Now audit committee is responsible to define what is meant by material modification, what will be the threshold for material modification, and disclose it as a part of policy on materiality of related party transaction, which is a public document. So every company is required to publish the related party policy on the website of the company. Okay. So to approve RPT where subsidiary company is involved and the listed company is not, if the value of transaction during a financial year exceeds 10% of the annual consolidated turnover of the listed entity. And SEBI has also given powers to audit committee or increase the role of the audit committee to approve the related party transaction where subsidiary is involved but listed company is not involved. So I have told you that apart from listed company and the related party, whatever transaction is there between subsidiary and the related party, between the subsidiary and the related party of the listed company, if these are the transactions where listed company is not involved, in that case audit committee can authorize even though such transactions are beyond 10% of the annual consolidated turnover. And this consolidated word is proposed to be replaced with standalone from 1st April 2023. Okay. So these are the changes which have been brought in by the SEBI circular dated 9th November 2021 and 22nd November 2021. And I can say that these circulars, these amendments are providing a very gray area and it is open for interpretation. It is very subjective in nature and some sort of clarification we are expecting from SEBI. And of course, a lot of work is going on in terms of industry. A lot of work is going on evaluating how these things will work out. So thank you so much. Anilji, if you're able to hear me, then so I'm done. Now the house is open for questions. So let me know if there is any questions.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm able to hear you. Yeah.
Sir, there are 2-3 questions, sir. Sir, question is Mr. Mukesh Ambani is related party to Mr. Anil Ambani and their respective group entity? Not required.
Sorry.
The question is, it is a very particular question. Just example, is Mr. Mukesh Ambani related party to Mr. Anil Ambani and their respective group entity?
Yes, because Mr. Mukesh Ambani and Mr. Anil Ambani is brothers, and they are considered as a relative as per India's accounting standard, Companies Act.
Yes.
So of course, they are the related parties. But
Yes,
of
yes.
course, if for example, if Anil Dhirubhai Ambani Group does not entered into any transaction with Mr. Mukesh Ambani, then disclosure is not required.
Okay. So can you share the format, if possible, right now to disclose related party transaction for non-India's companies?
So right now I have to just search out the format. So I don't have the format available right now, but of course I can share with the committee.
Okay. Another question is, sir, if a director of a private company is also an employee of the company, does salary advance recoverable on monthly basis from the salary falls under the related party transactions? And the private company has a policy of giving advances to other employees recovered from their future salary.
Yeah. So first of all, we need to understand whether a director of the private company is a relative. So of course, a director of the private company is a relative. Okay. So if such director is a relative, and of course the policy is to provide advances to everyone, so it is on arm's length basis. But whether such transactions requires for a disclosure, of course it will require for a disclosure, provided some regulations will not prohibit the disclosure of such kind of transaction.
Ji, sir. And the last question is, sir, individual disclosure required to be given for every transaction, or how do we give the disclosure?
So generally companies don't use to provide the individual disclosure. Even I have shown you the disclosure of data is still limited. So normally companies provide the bucket wise disclosure. For example, subsidiaries, let's say they have 10 subsidiaries and they are selling goods to 10 subsidiaries. So what is the sale of goods for these subsidiaries? So subsidiaries 5,000 crores, associates 2,000 crores. Okay. And they call the list of these subsidiaries and associates, like name of the subsidiary, name of the associates, their relationship. So list of related parties provided, and the transaction has to be disclosed on a bucket wise.
Fine, sir. Fine, sir. So these were the few questions for you, sir. It was the, sir, wonderful deliberation, and you have justified with your presentation. And it was really superb presentation, sir. And we have gained a lot through your deliberation. And of course, with the expert knowledge on automation from CA Sunil Gargji, it was nice to have both of you here in today's VCM on this, because both the topics are very relevant. In pandemic, everything is going on the this on e mode. So how to go for this automation, how to do all these things electronically. Sunilji has given his shared his vast knowledge, and of course your with your knowledge, the latest amendments and the latest requirement and disclosures as per the Companies Act as well as the other regulatory requirements. So both are the Act 1, and you have discussed everything which is relating to the both the topics, and we have gained a lot through your deliberation, and more than 3,000 members are live for these two important aspects. So from the core of my heart and on behalf of Committee for Members in Practice, I extend my heartiest thanks towards both the speakers, CA Sunil Gargji and CA Dr. Alok Gargji, for sparing your valuable time and enlightening all of us with the various intricacies on this automation as well as this particular topic of India. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Sunilji. Thank you so much, Alok Gargji. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.